This is Christopher Werth. I'm in Cape Town, South Africa, and in about a week, the World Cup will be kicking off, bringing with it hundreds of thousands of soccer fans from around the world. The brand new stadium here is finished for the most part, and the city is rather quiet. The tourists won't show up for several days yet, but you can tell everyone's ready. Outside the window of my hotel, the taxi drivers play card games out of the trunk of their cars for hours on end, just waiting for all the visitors to arrive. And I'm here looking into allegations that people are being forced out of Cape Town because of the World Cup, particularly the poor, people sleeping on the streets, squatting in old buildings, or living in the many informal settlements that dot the city. Earlier this year, a report put out by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing, Raquel Rolnick, looked at the impact mega events like the World Cup have on the poor. And what the report basically says is that preparing a city for global sports competitions often leads to poorer residents being forced from their homes and left without a decent place to live, leading to a violation of their human rights. This is significant in a country like South Africa that has a long and troubled history of forced evictions under apartheid, and where today a large part of the population live in informal settlements in urban areas, very often without access to basic services like water and electricity. And Rolnick told me she received several complaints about what was going on specifically in Cape Town, and the place she pinpoints in her report is this place called Joe Slovo. It's a long, narrow squatter settlement along the highway that links the city in the World Cup Stadium with the international airport in what was once the buffer zone between the road and what was a blacks-only township under apartheid. So for people coming to watch the matches in Cape Town, this will be one of the first things they'll see. Community leaders here tell me that about 3,000 families live here in shacks that are often made up of whatever material people can find. A lot of people here are unemployed, although for people who do have jobs, this is a very good location because it's close to the city center. Up until just several months ago, the government was trying to move these people to a temporary camp several miles away on the other side of the airport so that it could build houses here for what is known as the Into Gateway, the Into being the highway. Now, many of the people who have been critical of this plan, including the UN Special Rapporteur, academics, and housing activists, say the area was targeted in order to clean up the city before the World Cup. And CORE, the Center on Housing Rights and Evictions based in Geneva, stated that the plans to move residents to the temporary camps risk violating their human rights. And shortly after South Africa was awarded the World Cup in 2004, Cape Town's Department of Housing declared that Joe Slovo was a top priority for redevelopment due to its high visibility on the Gateway Corridor linking Cape Town International Airport with the city. Now, one of the dangers of living in shacks like these is fire. It's winter in South Africa, and a lot of the people living here use paraffin stoves. A huge fire in 2005 left thousands of people homeless, and many of those people ended up being relocated to one of the temporary camps that the housing minister was trying to get the rest of the people to move to. But the people who were still left at Joe Slovo refused to go. And to try to find out why, I visited one of the camps on the other side of the airport known as Blikkiesdorp, or Tin Can Town. It sits on a barren, dusty piece of land with Table Mountain in the background and these small metal one-room structures for as far as the eye can see. The city calls these temporary relocation areas and says there are about 1,700 families living here. The whole place is surrounded by a concrete fence, and the residents report that crime, and specifically rape, is very bad here. The police are constantly on patrol with dogs. I met people from all over Cape Town who all said they'd been moved here over the past several months. These women said they'd been sleeping on the streets and begging for change in one of the wealthier parts of Cape Town for years before they were sent here just several weeks ago. And a man I met said his family was recently removed from a building near Cape Town's practice stadium where the teams will be preparing for the World Cup. Whether he was moved because of the World Cup, he wasn't prepared to say. But this is the beginning of their first winter in Blikkiesdorp, and he was worried about how his children would do in the cold, with nothing but thin metal walls to protect them. Now, the city's director of housing, Elita Kotsi, told me the city's not removing anyone for the World Cup, and that it only evicts in emergency situations. And she says Blikkiesdorp actually surpasses the minimum standards the city is required to meet, and that the area is part of its wider housing strategy. And for now, the residents of Joe Slovo won't be going to a place like Blikkiesdorp. They've held protests, hired lawyers, and even set out on the highway and closed it down in order to fight their removal. Eventually, their case went all the way to South Africa's constitutional court. Last year, the court delayed the evictions, and since then, the province has decided that it will work to upgrade the area with the people living right where they are. One of the men I spoke with said he was proud that tourists coming for the World Cup will see South Africa as it is.